You ever see two dogs playing and they're happy and they're jumping around and wagging their tails. And then all of a sudden, something trips the wires of one of those dogs. We don't always know what it is. But what we see is that suddenly the hair on the dog's back stands up. And almost as soon as that happens, the hair on the other dog's back stands up too. They're picking up on the vibes, right? The same is true for us human beings. Our nervous systems are very much like those of other mammals. Welcome to How to Trust Yourself, the podcast for anyone who's done with the endless second guessing and ready to tune in to your inner guidance. I'm Anna Holtzman, and I get that feeling of trudging through life like you're wading through mud, trying to figure out which way to go. In my 20s, I spent more time asking what should I do with my life than writing about crushes or bad dates in my journal. I've tried on a lot of answers: architecture, publishing, editing reality TV for a decade, and finally landing on therapy and coaching, helping people like you connect with your purpose. But here's the thing I've learned through all those twists and turns. Trusting yourself is the key to moving forward, even when the path feels messy. So if you're ready to stop doubting yourself and start listening to your gut, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back, dear listeners. And for those of you who are new around here, I'm Anna Holtzman. I am a therapist and coach, and I help sensitive creatives, entrepreneurs, and coaches show up for their work without burning out or retreating into freeze. And on today's episode, I want to answer a question that I've been getting a lot lately from people who reach out to me inquiring about private coaching. And that question is, what is the difference between the way I coach and traditional talk therapy? There's a pretty vast difference. And I thought, since this question is clearly on a lot of people's minds, why don't I make a podcast episode about it? And to do that, I'm going to tell a story about a client, which I'm putting in air quotes, that I'll call Kathy. And I'm using a pseudonym because this is actually just an amalgam of several different clients and myself, who they and I show some of these very typical common patterns of hesitation and freeze and overthinking that you may find yourself relating to. And you may also find some insights and inspirations about what a path forward could look like as I describe how I work with this kind of client, who I'll call Kathy, and who also represents aspects of myself as well. So here we go with the story of Kathy. Kathy reached out to me to work with me one-on-one, to join my private coaching program. And she had a very, very specific goal in mind about starting to get herself and her business out there, starting to make posts and telling her story on social media. She wanted to put a website up for the first time. She wanted to reach out to potential clients and let folks know that she is in business. She is offering help with a specific issue that she's really great at helping with. And she wanted to connect with those who could really use her support. And in our first session, what happened was very, very typical of what happens when a client like this first starts out with me. And frankly, I can completely relate to what's happening. So what happened is that in our first session, Kathy kind of, laid it all out on the table, all of these things she wanted to do. And there was a lot of them. I mentioned a few, and there were even more. So she came in just, full of ideas and desires and this this sense of like oomph, this energy and this inspiration and excitement. And she got it all out kind of in one breath, this sort of breathless list of things she wants to do. And then when she got to the end of that breath, whew, she felt all tuckered out, as I would have as well. Then came in all of the reasons why not only she hadn't done these things yet, but why she is hesitating on doing them now. And they span the full gamut of things that, again, are totally understandable. I can completely relate to them. It started off with the imposter syndrome, stuff like, I'm scared. I don't know what people are going to think, she's segueing from doing something fairly different in her past career to doing something new. So there's a lot of fear about like, are people going to take me seriously? Are they going to feel like, what is this? You're like coming out of the blue with this new thing that you say you're doing. She was worried she'd feel embarrassed if people reacted that way. There were fears about people, not noticing at all. Like, what if she put herself out there and it was crickets and she didn't get any reply whatsoever? She knew she'd feel really bummed out if that happened. And understandably, we want to protect ourselves from feeling disappointed. Um, on the flip side, like many of us, she also had sort of like the opposite partner fears to those fears of being ignored. She had the fears of being noticed. What if, like I was saying before, there were the fears of criticism, but there were also the fears of success. What if she received a barrage of requests from people who wanted to work with her? And what if she wasn't prepared or ready to take on that many clients all at once? What if she felt overwhelmed? What if she felt like she was losing control and couldn't set boundaries in her schedule and her time? What if she got tired? What if she got burned out on the very, first go round of launching her business? So there are a lot of fears that are very human, normal, expectable fears that come up when we are on the precipice of stepping into and launching something new. Along with those more obvious surface level fears were some other thoughts that on the surface looked more like logical stumbling blocks. She has other things going on in her life. She is a caretaker to an older relative, and that takes up a fair amount of time and energy. And her schedule is not always predictable because of the caretaking stuff that comes up. And also, she's about to move. She's moving from one home to another and changing locations in the process. This all has to do with consolidating the living situation for the relative she's caretaking. And so there's, again, a lot of time and energy and money and unpredictable things that come up that go into this move. And there are the practical concerns that she brought up. How can I, is this really the right time for me to be launching a business? Even though clearly part of her felt it was, because she had decided to invest in coaching and to invest her time, energy, and money into working together with me and getting support on launching this business. But when she took that initial step in of beginning our coaching work, these fears, of course, became more prominent. And so all of these logistical concerns that are very, very real. I'm not saying she was making these up, because she absolutely was not. And the fear surrounding these logistics really flared up the moment we started working together. And that fear creates, not just for her, but for anyone. And this is how our nervous system works. The fear, its whole purpose is to put on the brakes, right? To say, whoa, 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 not so fast. And so it throws up this overwhelm and confusion that makes it really difficult to get clear on, okay, there's a lot going on here. I see that. Given the current circumstances, what is the doable next step that I can and will take? So that's what Kathy came in with at our first session. Very much par for the course. We are each unique and wonderfully different individuals with different circumstances, different personalities, different energy types. And there are some very, very universally human patterns that we all tend to exhibit, myself included, when we make a commitment to something that we really care a lot about. And because we care a lot about it, the stakes are high, and that can bring in a lot of fear. This is why coaching is so helpful. This is why I work with coaches on things that I am doing that I care a lot about and that consequently bring up fear. So I was taking all of this in, and as I was listening to Kathy and coaching her a little and asking some questions, I could notice how my body was responding to all of these logistics and stumbling blocks that Kathy was bringing into the session. I could feel this kind of tightening and constriction in my stomach, in my shoulders, in my throat, the channel for expression, for getting ourselves and our ideas out there and connecting with others. I could feel this subtle constriction coming into my body. And what I understand from, having done this work with myself and with clients for years now, what I understand is happening in that moment is that our nervous systems, human beings, our nervous systems are like tuning forks, and we resonate with each other's vibrations, which, is language that you may or may not connect to, but just I'll give a very common everyday example that I think we all can understand. You ever see two dogs playing and they're happy and they're jumping around and wagging their tails, and then all of a sudden something trips the wires of one of those dogs. We don't always know what it is, but what we see is that suddenly the hair on the dog's back stands up, and almost as soon as that happens, the hair on the other dog's back stands up too, because one of the dog's nervous system got activated into some kind of alertness or threat response mode, and the other dog is in the same energy field. Whatever language you want to use to describe it, they're picking up on the vibes, right? And their hair goes up too. So the same is true for us human beings. We are, I think, in many ways conditioned not to notice this is happening or not to think about it or acknowledge it. But our nervous systems are very much like those of other mammals. And what I was picking up on in noticing my own tightening, my own nervous system kind of clenching my body up ever so slightly, I was picking up on the fear that was arising in Kathy, in my client. Very understandable, natural fears that I can very much connect with, empathize with, and relate to and feel in my own body. And so when I noticed that, I recognized, okay, on the surface, we're talking about logistics, but what's going on underneath the logistics is fear. And we need to work with the fear. That's what my job is. That's the whole reason I'm here, is to help my client work with their fear. So in that first session, I pointed out exactly what I've just described to you. I shared with Kathy what I was experiencing in my own body. So it wasn't just about her being out there in outer space with her fear. I was bringing us together in the experience, and I normalized it. And I let her know I experienced the exact same kind of fear. I'm right there with you. Not fear of her process, but when it comes to my own things that I'm doing where I'm stepping into something new or a new level of something, I experience the exact same fears, and I'm working on the same stuff with my coaches. So I normalized it, brought it into the realm of not just her and our awareness, but into, this is a common human experience. You're not alone. This is totally normal and it's totally workable. And we're going to work through this together. And in that session, we began working through the fears using some of my tools like dialoguing with fear, like co-regulation, like talking. I helped Kathy become aware of what are some of her go-to self-regulation tools. And by the end of the session, her fear had come down just enough that together we could collaboratively get clarity on what was that one next step that she wanted to take. And she decided that the next step she wanted to take was to there was just one finishing touch she wanted to put on her website and then to publish it. Great. So we came back together for our next session. I meet with my private coaching clients twice per month so that there's consistency and we can really track what's going on together. So she came back for our second session. We had a little check-in and she said, "You know what? I didn't publish the website yet because when I went in there to make that last little tweak, I realized there's actually this, that, and the other, and all these other things she wanted to do on her website before it was perfectly ready to be shared with the world." Same stuff was going on, right? The same exact stuff. And once again, I've been there. I recognize this because I've not only seen this with other clients, but I've been there myself. I'll be there again. This is part of the process. So I brought that to light. And Kathy was like, I knew what you were going to say even before you said it. She was getting it already at that point. And I said, okay, this is now session 2. I can get a little more loose and casual while still being loving and supportive. And I said, here's what I'm going to say with love and support, because I really want you to take action on these things you want to take action on. I want you to be moving forward on this purpose of yours. So you have invested time, money, and energy into this coaching work. And you are going to get the most bang for your buck if you take action now. And then we use our sessions not to figure out how to think about the next action step, or, not to circle around it, not to rework through the same fear of doing it over and over again, which is very human, totally understandable, but you're going to get the most out of this if you take the action, and then we use these sessions to work through the fears that come up as a result of taking the action. Because no matter what that action is, and we're going to break it down into something that is small and doable enough and bite-sized enough for you to actually do it. If it's if it's feeling impossible to take that first step, the first step is too big. We need to cut it in half and make it smaller. And we're going to make it smaller and smaller and smaller until it is doable. No matter how small on paper this action step is, when you take it, it will trigger more fears. That is a given. That is an absolute given. If that weren't the case, you'd be already at the finish line of this thing. And anything that is worth doing that we care about deeply is going to stir up fears. So we expect that taking that first step is going to stir up fear. We don't try to avoid it. We don't deny it. We expect that it will stir up fear. And that's what our coaching sessions are for. And Kathy really got it. And that's exactly what she did. During that session, we identified, what is that smallest next step she can take. She took this step. It did indeed, even though it felt to her on paper like it was a really tiny step, it kicked up a wave of fear. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But the way that I think of what this kind of coaching is, it's less, it does involve elements that look similar to talk therapy, but it's a little bit more akin to like therapeutic driving lessons. And here's what I mean by that. So what was going on in Kathy's first session, and Kathy is a stand-in for pretty much all my clients and myself. What was going on there is that our nervous system, this is a metaphor time. It's like our nervous system has two pedals, the gas and the brake. And Kathy's fear was slamming on the brakes. And at the very same time, Kathy's creativity and her excitement and desire to pursue her goal, her passion was slamming on the gas. Her passion was saying, you've got to do every single idea that you have all at once. Go, 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 go. Jamming on the gas pedal, while simultaneously her fear was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm going to jam on the brake pedal. And where I come in as metaphorically a therapeutic driving coach is I'm going to help you learn how to break it down to one doable step at a time so that we're tapping the gas pedal, not overwhelming our nervous system by slamming on it, and feeling out of control, right? But we're just tapping the gas pedal. And then when the fear gets kicked up, I'm helping you learn how to ease on the brakes. We need the brake and the gas. We need both in order to navigate effectively to where we want to go. But we need, just like with a car, we need to learn how to tap the gas, ease the brakes, tap the gas, ease the brakes. And that is what I help my clients with step by step by step. So Kathy took this first step of, actually the step she took was just to literally hit publish on her website, knowing that a website is an iterative project. You can continue to tweak and improve it along the way. But as the cliche but true saying goes, published is better than perfect. So she hit publish, thinking, okay, simple enough, right? We had talked it through. It kicked up this wave of fear. And what came out of that we got to work through together in our next session was all of these stories from her early life of experiences when speaking up or like claiming her own authority had gotten her in trouble, or it felt like that got her in trouble. And actually, the way that I just said that is very significant because, this was all very much unconscious until it rose to the surface through our conversations. But what she could feel was like, oh, no, 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 danger. Her nervous system was signaling danger. And her reflexive interpretation of that was, oh, shoot, I should never have hit published. I should never have started a business. I should never have said that I can help people. And I should never have put myself out there. She thought that her creativity was dangerous and that she should shut it all down. What we got to unpack and uncover in that next session together is that her creativity is beautiful. All of our creativities are beautiful. They're not dangerous. The reason why her nervous system was signaling danger was because she had this catalog of experiences from her early life when, she expressed herself creatively and people around her, oftentimes authority figures, reacted in ways that felt unsafe. Not because there was something inherently wrong with her creativity, quite the opposite. Their reactions had everything to do with them and what they were going through and their unprocessed emotions and their regrets and resentments and whatever that they were, you know, projecting. They were triggered by seeing her express her creativity and, it triggered something in them, perhaps their regrets at not expressing their own creativity or their pain from, when they were a kid and they got shushed when they expressed their creativity, whatever it was. So we got to unpack why the fear was coming up, and then we got to untangle it from her creativity. And we got to help her nervous system understand that her creativity is not dangerous. It's fantastic and it must be protected and stood up for. So that was huge. And I just love having these exploration sessions with clients like this. You never know really what's going to come up in these sessions. And so here's what Kathy learned through this process is that, in her past, when she felt scared or uncomfortable and didn't know why, she would just shut it all down. She would just, oh, forget this project. I'm going to put this away. This is too uncomfortable. And you know what? This is exactly why I do this work, because I have experienced this myself. I I too had a pattern in the earlier part of my life of I'd have all of this inspiration and creativity and ideas, and I'd put something out there, but then I'd get scared. The first like unsupportive glance I got from someone about what I was expressing, I'd get scared, I'd recoil, I'd retreat. All of these unconscious memories from my own childhood would come in and say, whoa, 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 this is dangerous. Let's distract you. Let's get you busy with other stuff. Let's make you really tired. Let's make you think you've lost interest in this project. And I would retreat from it. And it wasn't until I was in my 40s when I discovered this whole world of mind-body medicine that I was using to heal myself from chronic migraine that I really learned about the nervous system in depth and learned about my nervous system and started to understand what had been going on all these years and how I could now work through it. And so with my clients and with Kathy discovered that she didn't have to be um, stopped by this frightened nervous system. She could use support and tools and collaboration, she and I together, co-regulation, co-exploration to move through these fears that in the past had felt like stuck points. They didn't have to be stuck points anymore. And in fact, not only could we move through them together with support and reflection, but they each became learning opportunities that enriched the whole process. So if you, dear listener, are seeing yourself in any part of Kathy's story, which really represents the story of pretty much everyone I've ever supported as a client, and it also represents my own story. If you see yourself in any part of this and you would also like support taking action safely, steadily, and aligned with your creativity and purpose, I invite you to reach out to me. And you can do that by sending me a DM on Instagram. I'm there at Anna_Holtzman. You can send me an email, Anna@AnnaHoltzman.com. I highly encourage you to fill out my application for private coaching, which you can find on my website, AnnaHoltzman.com, because simply filling out the questions in this questionnaire, it will help you start to get clarity. And if we work together in our sessions, we're going to navigate your nervous system responses together. We're going to take bite-sized steps forward together with my support. We'll process the fear in real time and create sustainable momentum for your work and your visibility. I take on only a small number of private clients each quarter so I can really connect deeply with each person and provide individualized support. And if this feels like it might be the right next step for you, you can go to AnnaHoltzman.com and fill out that application form. And I cannot wait to read it. I love learning about you when I read these forms that you fill out. I often feel so connected to the stories and the visions and the fears that you share with me. And I love to provide support. Just in my initial response, I respond to each and every one personally. So I look forward to learning more about you. And until next time, take good care. I'll see you again soon. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor. Hit that follow button so you don't miss a thing and leave a rating or review. It helps more people find this show, and honestly, it makes my day. And if you're looking for more ways to trust yourself and start listening to that gut instinct of yours, come hang out with me on Instagram at Anna_Holtzman. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, trust yourself. You've got this.